I'm PLO Lumumba here at the Aberdares Country Club and Sanctuary in Nyeri County in Kenya, and of course the continent of Africa. And we are talking Africa. And today we talk about, in my view, and in the view of many, one of the greatest Africans that ever bestrode this earth. In fact, it is said of him, Kwame Nkrumah is dead, Nkrumah never dies. This man was ahead of his times, born in Nkrofo, in what is today called Ghana. And for Africa, Nkrumah becomes important because of the role that he played in an attempt to unite Africa. We know that he went to school at Lincoln, and the story is told, whether it's apocryphal or not, is neither here nor there. But it helps our story that when he was told to write a personal statement as a condition precedent to joining Lincoln University, he wrote, "There is so much to be done, so little time." And when he goes to Lincoln University, he meets great individuals and interacts with individuals such as Nnamdi Azikiwe, and ultimately begins to think Africa. And it is instructive that he joins the struggle for independence, and he comes known to the world a lot more effectively in 1945 in Manchester, when he is one of the few people from the African continent that attend the conference which is held in London, the Pan-African Conference. And the struggle for independence of Ghana is then proceeding in earnest. And he goes back to Ghana, and he's not satisfied with the process. He thinks that this is too slow. And when he forms his political party and Ghana regains independence in 1957, he becomes iconic to the world when on that day he says that the independence of Ghana means nothing if Africa is not free. He then begins a series of meetings which are designed to unite Africa. And it must be remembered that the neo-colonizers were very clear in their mind that they would never allow Africa to unite. So when Nkrumah calls a meeting jointly with the King of Morocco in Casablanca in 1960, they are also convening a meeting in Monrovia, and another one in Brazzaville, and another one in Antananarivo in what was then known as Malagasy, giving birth to two schools about African unity. The Monrovia group, which says that African unity should be slow and should not be as intimate as it should be. And then, of course, it also gives birth to the Casablanca group. But before the 1960 meeting in Casablanca, Nkrumah convenes a meeting, the first all-African meeting in Accra, Ghana, in 1958. By that time, Ghana had been renamed as Ghana from Gold Coast in 1957. And there is a debate as to who gave the country the name Ghana. Some say it is Dankwa, some say it is Nkrumah, but that is neither here nor there. So that when all these are happening, there are schools that are emerging, and Nkrumah is at the head of them. The meeting is then held in Accra, Ghana. And on the side of those who want unity are iconic individuals led by Kwame Nkrumah himself, Ahmed Sékou Touré of Guinea, Gamal Abdel Nasser of Egypt, and there are the others in the Monrovia group. And because our focus is on Nkrumah, I want us to remember what he says. It was on Saturday. It was on the 25th day of May. It was 1963. 32 heads of states and government assembled in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to discuss what Africa should be. And what happens? What happens is that Nkrumah tells his audience, I am asking us before we leave here, we should have one Africa, we should have one government, we should have one currency, and even suggest that the capital of the new United Africa should be in Leopoldville, in what is today the Democratic Republic of Congo and what is today Kinshasa. The leaders don't agree with him. And that is how the Organization of African Unity is created, a weak body. He then thinks that he can continue with that debate and lead to the unity of Africa. In 1964, he is present in Cairo when Gamal Abdel Nasser convenes the meeting. And in 1965, when he convenes the next meeting in Accra, Ghana, he thinks that today in Accra there is going to be unity. And I remember when I read and subsequently in my younger days meet Julius Kambarage Nyerere, he tells me in 1997, when he was the guest of honor on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of Ghana's independence, he says that when they left the meeting in 1965 in Accra, he heard an African leader saying, you know, I'm happy. I thought that I would leave Ghana having lost my presidency with Nkrumah being the president of Africa. And it is in that year that Nkrumah also writes the book, Neo-Colonialism, the Last Stage of Imperialism. And 1 year later, Kwame Nkrumah is overthrown in a coup d'etat, which we now know was engineered from the United States of America and from the United Kingdom. That year in 1966, when he is overthrown by General Kotoka and others, all his books are banned. All his speeches are banned. Nobody is to talk about Nkrumah. It is in 1972, after the coup d'etat led by Ignatius Kutu Acheampong, that the restoration of Kwame Nkrumah begins. What is the Osagiefo's legacy, therefore? That we now remember him so very fondly. What did he do? What did he see that we could not see? To allow me this cliche, Nkrumah had the sight of a Jewish prophet. The things that he saw in those early days, many people did not see. He saw it in 1961 when he offered his forces to Patrice Emery Lumumba that the neo-colonial project was coming back, but they killed Lumumba in 1961. He saw that unity was necessary, and he said so in 1963 when they killed Sylvanus Olympio in Togo. He wanted unity of a political kind. He knew that militarily, if you are weak, it doesn't matter. He was giving meaning to those words of John Henry Clark when John Henry Clark said, "It is useless to shout black is beautiful when black is not powerful. Black must be beautiful and black must be powerful. Only then will the world listen to you." So he wanted military strength. He knew that economically we had to be strong, and that is why he was saying, let us have one currency so that we are not going to be confused. Today, there are over 33 currencies in the continent of Africa, none of which is called a hard currency. 80% of African transactions are terminated in the United States dollars. African banks have their agency in European banks in New York and Washington. We either use SWIFT, which is incorporated in Belgium, or use IBAN. We do not have an African way of transacting. We are just improving it now. The Nkrumah saw it in those early days. He wanted us to have one language as the lingua franca, not ignoring the others, but having one lingua franca. And even in those early days, he was toying with Kiswahili, and of course he was also suggesting that Hausa and indeed that Oromo could be some of the languages, and he knew that that unity was significant. You know, when I remember Nkrumah, he also talked about having an open sky. So when you see the Yamoussoukro protocol on open skies in Africa, it is Nkrumah. When you see the human rights in Maputo, it is Nkrumah. When you see the Malabo Declaration on agriculture, Africa feeding itself, it is Nkrumah. When you see Africa Continental Free Trade Area, it is Nkrumah. When you see Africa Agenda 2063, it is Nkrumah. And if you doubt me, I urge you to read the letter that was written by Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the then chairman of the African Commission Union in the year 2013, when he said that Africa must apologize to Kwame Nkrumah. And he says in that letter that all the things that we are doing now, whether it is Agenda 2063, whether it is Africa Continental Free Trade Area, these are the things that Nkrumah talked about in 1963. These are the things that he talked about in 1965. These are the things that he talked about earlier in 1964. These are the things that he talked about in 1958. These are the things that he could foresee in 1960 and 61 in Casablanca. So Nkrumah is indeed the father figure. And when a vote was carried out as to who is the greatest African leader in the 20th century, there was no competition. It was Deosagie for Kwame Nkrumah, and closely, of course, Julius Kambarage Nyerere. But Kwame Nkrumah was way ahead because he could see that African unity was the only way in which we could immunize ourselves from the stratagems of the neo-colonizer. Another thing that Nkrumah was very clear about was that Africa in the early days should be non-aligned and positively neutral. That is why in 1961, Kwame Nkrumah, President Sukarno of Indonesia, Jawaharlal Nehru of India, Joseph Broz Tito of Yugoslavia said when they were forming the non-aligned movement, Africa will neither look east nor west. Africa will look forward. Nkrumah wanted a strong Africa. Nkrumah wanted a united Africa. Nkrumah wanted a prosperous Africa. Nkrumah wanted an Africa that used its resources, which are natural and human for purposes of the continent of Africa. Nkrumah recognized that Africa could only be respected and Africa could only create an environment that is good for our men and women if Africa was united and using her resources for the benefit of the people of Africa. And that is why it is true that Nkrumah is dead, but Nkrumah never dies. He never dies because his ideas are as relevant today as they were when he articulated them in 1940s, in 1950s, in 1960s, and even in the early 1972s before he went to be with his Mecca in Bucharest in Romania, and ultimately he is now fully restored in Ghana and fully restored in the minds of the continent of Africa, a great African who bestrides the African continent like the fabled Colossus. Osagie for Kwame Nkrumah. Ladies and gentlemen, our conversation about the continent of Africa continue apace. Let us break until we meet again to continue those healthy and necessary conversations. Thank you very much.
The world is changing, and so is Africa's reality. Political shifts, new partnerships, and economic opportunities. And we're here to uncover why and how it's done. What do the billion-dollar IMF loans have to do with the Kenyan unrest? Are US and French troops actually withdrawing from African states after years of presence? Is Europe's so-called green agenda so green and helpful after all? Why are more and more African countries increasing trade with Russia? And how is Britain lending Africa the treasures London looted? Now, from colonial legacies and security to the future of African democracies, we break down the key challenges ahead and analyze the solutions. While the world is watching Africa, tune in with us and question more with RT International on Maisha TV Kenya.
number one is leadership in Africa.
What can we do for Africa? That was a wrong question. The right question was, what can we do with Africa?
What Africa do we want?
Africa had to seek first the political kingdom, and the rest would be given unto them. Unfortunately, we sought and obtained the political kingdom, but there is still a debate as to whether the rest has been given unto us.
Half of our people here are below 20 years old. Yes? Look at the average age of our presidents. It's about 63, 64 years old. We're the only continent in the world where we have presidents at 90 years old starting new terms. I mean, you guys are crazy or what?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Bushabi Jr. on your screen, bringing to you a program called Maisha Talk. This is where we build your capacity to achieve your dreams and visions. One thing I've learned in life is nobody can ever tell you that you can never be anything or achieve anything in this world. Shut them down. You can achieve anything in this world. And in this program, that is what we are talking about. Principles, attitudes, belief systems, where you are going to gain a lot. You're better off than anybody who's not going to watch this program. This is going to change your life. It's big, it's fun, it's educating, it's entertaining. Right here on Maisha Television, where you choose it, you watch it, and you definitely love it.
This keeps me going on those days when I feel like giving up. Fire.
Do not want the money or properties achieved in a corrupt way.
Badala ya kusaidia watoto wadogo wadogo katika academy za sport, wewe kazi yako imekuwa kila weekend unakuja kwa matanga kutukana viongozi. Wewe ni waziri wa michezo ama waziri wa matanga na masuala za ndani.
Sasa wewe unatuambia nini? This government is going to punish you more than they will punish me.
Tuko na mheshimiwa Eugene, tuko na mheshimiwa Lusaka na mheshimiwa Wetangula.
I have no problem. I have full confidence in the agencies that we have to do their job. People are out there bandying my brother yesterday. Me, I've said, if he's guilty, aendelee.
Lakini hata nyinyi mkuwe na mshike rada. Sasa nyinyi wakati ya kufanya kazi mnasema tafuta Ruto, lakini siku ya kupiga kura mnaniambia TV. Sasa nyinyi kweli mko na plani?
We invite you to like Maisha TV Kenya on all our online media platforms. Facebook at Maisha TV Kenya, Twitter at Maisha TV Kenya, Instagram at Maisha TV Kenya. Maisha TV now invites you to send your feedback or complain because we listen to you. You can now reach us on all our media platforms on Maisha TV Just send your messages to our social media platforms, call or text us on 0746 999 841 or send us an email to info@maishatv.co.ke. We care. We shall respond to your feedback or complaints within 14 days. Also, keep a copy of messages sent to us. We listen to you because you listen and you watch us. Maisha TV. Choose it, watch it, and love it.
I am PLO LUMUMBA. We are here at the Aberdares National Reserve in Nyeri County in the Republic of Kenya in the mother continent of Africa. And today we discuss a topic that is significant, the scramble for Africa. Many of us who are students of history will remember as early as AD 77, the Roman orator Pliny the Elder said, "Out of Africa, something new always comes." And in those early days, Pliny the Elder was talking about Africa as the home of resources. The Roman world then had interaction with what is now known as the Maghreb, which was populated by people of African origin. It was to take many years before the European traders got interested in Africa. And they got interested in Africa as early as the 13th, 14th, and 15th century, when the Portuguese and the Spaniards wanted to find out what it is that was in Asia. So that the early explorations of individuals such as Vasco da Gama was targeted towards looking for the shortest route to India. And when Vasco da Gama and indeed early explorers are going through the coasts of West Africa, they begin to make wonderful discoveries. If it is not the beautiful places in the Gambia and in Senegal, they were astounded when they got to what is present-day Ghana, which they named Gold Coast because of the abundance of gold at that time. And as the Europeans were doing this, it must also be remembered that the Arabs were also active on the eastern part of Africa, and by some accounts, even the Chinese had started getting into the continent of Africa, and that is how you account for the presence of Chinese in the island of Malagasy. And this scramble continued apace as a way of controlling the resources of Africa. You have to look at it as the quest for the Europeans to finance their industrialization at that time. So that when the Belgians, through King Leopold of the Belgians, are seizing Congo, they are doing so because they want rubber. They are doing so because they want gold. They are doing so because they want silver. And what they are doing is to build the streets of Brussels, the streets of Ghent. The French are doing it to build Marseille and France. London is doing it to build London and Manchester. They are taking away agricultural produce, whether it is cocoa or coffee or it is tea. This was the scramble for Africa in those early days. And the history of it is known to us. It ultimately gave birth to the struggle for independence, and even before independence, the resistance, the Hehe Rebellion, the Maji Rebellion, the Mau Mau Rebellion, the Zulu Wars, and the rebellions in West Africa. All these rebellions were resisting this scramble for Africa. But Africa in the 1950s, to be more specific, started to regain independence. But of course, we are aware that a little earlier in 1922, Egypt had regained independence. We are equally aware that Sudan had regained independence in 1956. But the real drive for independence is in the 1950s, culminating in the independence of Ghana in 1957, where Kwame Nkrumah says the independence of Ghana means nothing if the rest of Africa is not independent. We thought then that the scramble for Africa had ended, but we now know better. And one could have seen the early vestiges of the colonial project, the 1940s pact of the retention of colonialism in French colonies, the resistance of the Portuguese against African independence until the Carnation Revolution in Lisbon, the creation of the Commonwealth of Independent Nations. All these were pointing to one fact, that we had colonizers that were reluctant to leave. And when, therefore, independence is regained, another thing happens in the world. The emergence of the United States of America as a major power in 1945, and of course the Soviet Union at that time. And we begin to see, as we now look at the world, the new hegemons who are still looking at Africa as a source of resources. And this is what brings us to what I call the new scramble for Africa. The new scramble for Africa is tied to the neo-colonial project, that African countries have a flag independence, complete with black leaders, complete with national anthems, complete with structures that were inherited from the colonizers, but they are not independent. An African called C.O. Makame has written a book, Dependent Independence. And the Nigerian Adekeyo Adebajo has written a book, The Curse of Berlin, which it talks about the false independence in Africa. What do we see now? We see countries engaging Africa in a very unique way. We see the United States of America, which considers itself the hegemon in the world, summoning African leaders to Washington, telling African leaders to do through the IMF and the World Bank, entering into negotiations for their resources. There is a scramble for Africa. We see the Chinese in a very subtle and non-threatening way, present in Africa through infrastructural development, subtle, engaging the continent of Africa in a unique way. We see Turkey engaging with Africans. If they are not in Somalia, they are present in Libya. If they are not present in Libya, they are present in Kenya. The Turks are here with us. We see the Emiratis with us. We see the Japanese with us. We see the Germans with us. We see our old friends from Russia with us. Everybody is with us. They are with us because Africa, as Pliny the Elder rightly said, something new is always coming out of Africa. And the reason why it is important to interrogate this is because this scramble has many nuances. There are those who want to engage with Africa in a manner that is mutually beneficial. Yet there are those who want to engage with Africa in a manner that is parasitic and controlling. When we talk about the new scramble for Africa, the question that comes to mind is scramble for what? We had the old scramble, but we are scrambling for the continent of Africa in the 21st century. And they are old and new players. What is their target? Let us look at each of the players. We must remember in that regard the geopolitics that now dictates the affairs of the world. Why are the Americans here? They are here because We live in a world that in their view is hostile. The Americans are here because they want to control. They want a new sphere of influence. And that is why they have their bases. That is why they are looking for their spheres of influence, have their bases in Diego Garcia. That's why they want their bases in Somalia. That's why they want to be present in Botswana. That is why they want to be present in the Atlantic Ocean, because of geopolitics and because in their definition, there is a new threat in the world which affects America's dominance. The Russians are there, they must be controlled and checkmated. The Chinese are there, they must be controlled and checkmated. So we must look at the military posturing in that regard. The British are also recognizing, of course, they recognize that the colonial project is not what it is now. So military projection is one of the reasons why there is a scramble for Africa to retain spheres of influence. But in addition to that, there is a scramble for other things. There is a scramble for minerals, uranium, cobalt, lithium. As we move into the era of artificial intelligence, Africa is once again the home of the resources that you need to power all these. And when you see countries showing their interest in Zimbabwe, showing their interest in the Lobito corridor in Angola, showing their interest in the Road and Belt Initiative and their interest in the Democratic Republic of Congo or in Burkina Faso or Niger, is because we are looking for uranium. It is because we are looking for cobalt. It is because we are looking for rare earth. So it would appear to me that natural resources remains a constant factor in the new scramble for Africa. But we are also looking for other things other than that. We are also looking at the scramble because of labor. Once again, and this is very curious, that it started with labor, which was classical slavery, but it is coming back to labor again. Coming back to labor because the young African population is being spirited to Saudi Arabia, being spirited to the Emiratis, being spirited to Germans, being spirited to different parts of the world in the health sector. And this is perhaps how I have always understood the green card. The green card is not because people love you, but periodically you look at the labor you want, and the blue card in the European Union. So the scramble is in that phase. And that is why new players are also important. You know, when you visit Dubai, they have a safari park. They have imported animals all from the continent of Africa, so that you have a park which is created and you don't in their mind have to come to Africa. There is this new scramble. And you look at it even in terms of the peace initiatives that are taking place. Why is it that Qatar has become so important now in peace initiatives in the continent of Africa? Because they want to position themselves. I also know that the new scramble is about food production. There are many countries that are now hiring farms in the continent of Africa for purposes of production of food, so that Africa is also being seen as a market. When you are talking about a population of 1.4 billion, if you convert that into a market which buys your products, then you are doing good business. And this essentially is why Africa is becoming very attractive. You look at, when I look at some of the products in Africa and I see where they are produced, it tells me that the new scramble is defined by military reasons, it is defined by science, it is defined by climate change, it is defined by commerce. It is a scramble which is different, unique, but it is a scramble nevertheless. That is the state of Africa, but not her fate. Thank you very much. When we converse about the continent of Africa, the conversations never stop. But we will see you again when we engage in those conversations. Let us meet again about Africa.